All right, I've got a question for you. Does everyone here have the folder that I gave you last week with all that bootstrap in it? Yes? Okay, then do me a favor. Go to that folder, all right, and open up the folder. You'll have like parts 1 through 13. Highlight the part 01 folder and remove it. However you do your removing. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I figure you can all do that. Then, if you go out, you've got the correct one from today. You've got a part 1 that I just sent you before class. We are going to use version 3. All right? And it's 3.3 rather than 4.0. In 4.0, they changed a lot of the terminology. I spent 2 hours, and all I got done in 2 hours was redoing the header and redoing the footer. And there was just not going to be enough time over the weekend to get everything redone. So I said, we're going to do it this way. That's not a terrible thing. All right? So, Colin, just so you hear this, I asked everybody to open up that folder that that I sent you last week, that bootstrap folder. It's got 13 parts in it, and remove the part 1 folder and replace it with the one I sent you this morning. All right. Now, if you look up on the screen, and we're going to go through all of this. This is where we're going to go. We're going to go through all 13 steps. Today, hell no. I'm not that good, even if you are, but we'll go through 4 or 5 of the steps today, 4 or 5 of the steps on Tuesday, and 4 or 5 of the steps on Wednesday. All right? I do have your tests graded. You'll get them back toward the end of class today. So let me show you. This looks virtually the same as what we did before. That's part 1. Now, if you look up on the screen here, this is what I'd like to get through today. If we get that far, great, and if we don't, that's fine too. And we're going to get to part 2 that's going to look like this. Hopefully you can see that at the top of your screen. That is going to be our header. This is referred to as the brand right here, and these are going to be our 3 pages that we can go to. Even that's a little misnomer, but we'll fix that in a minute. So, if you notice, there's nothing on the bottom of the screen right now. Nothing there. When we get to part 3, we will put something there. You can see that. All right? Then we'll get to part 4. And in part 4, we will add some social icons if you look down toward the bottom right here. Then we'll get to part 5, where we'll put in a Jumbotron. All right? Now, natural question might be, are we going to get tested on this stuff? The answer is yes. Okay? When? It's going to be a bit. All right? And we will have a review before it. But that said, in addition to actually being tested on this stuff, by the second last day of the semester, I think the semester ends on like December 21st. So on the 20th, you will be required to submit to me, all right, your portfolio that you've done so far. We're going to go over it, so don't worry about it. It's still, what, 3 months away? All right. But that will have to be done using Bootstrap. Okay? That is actually worth like 10% of your grade. Okay. So, taking it from the top. Again, what I asked you to do was to go back to this folder that you have. Mine's got a different name on it. Don't let that bother you one way or the other, if I can find it. Brother. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So, what I asked you to do was to remove that part 01 that was in there and take what was in there, that part 01, and replace it with what I emailed you right there. Does that make sense to everyone? All right? You're going to have to unzip it, of course, once you move it in. Has everybody had a chance to do that? Yes? All right. Then, if you would, the only thing that's in the part 1, notice in the CSS, your individual style file is empty. There's nothing in it. We're not going to put anything in there until like part 4. The bootstrap.min.css, I went over with you the other day, so I'm not going to talk about that. The fonts, since we're using version 3 of Bootstrap, we get these Bootstrap fonts. They're not fonts, they're glyphicons. They're little mini icons. All right, we'll talk about that as we get on in here. Images, it's empty. When we get to about part 8 or part 9, if you remember, I gave you a miscellaneous folder in your stuff, and it has those images in there, then we'll worry about those images. Okay, but not until then. JavaScript, again, has got our jQuery and our bootstrap.min.js, and that's it. So the only file that's in here that we have to worry about is this one called index.html. So I'm going to open that file up. So this is part 1 of index. And I'm going to go over it line by line, even though we have somewhat gone over it already. I still don't think it's a bad thing to do. So I just want to concentrate on the new stuff. So in other words, if you look up on the screen here, I'm not going over any of that. We already have. All right? Now, starting with line 7 here, if you see that, and you may not have these comments in yours. If you don't worry about it. But I just want to mention this. There is a problem with older versions of Internet Explorer using Bootstrap. In particular, in IE6, IE7, and IE8. I don't know what the figures are, but my guess is if you looked at the number of people using IE6, 7, and 8, it's probably at least 10% of the population. What Bootstrap 4 decided to do, Bootstrap 4, we're not using 4, but what Bootstrap 4 decided to do was they said, you know what, we're not supporting IE6, we're not supporting IE7, we're not supporting IE8, we're not supporting IE9. We're not supporting any of those. All right? That's Bootstrap 4. So this line goes away because they're not supporting them anymore. All right? And this is just a browser fix that basically says, as best you can, if you've got an older version of IE, try to use Edge, Microsoft Edge functionality instead. All right, I'm simplifying it, but that's pretty much it. All right. Unfortunately, some of you on your test, and again, you're getting your test back before the end of the period, and we will go over it. All right, I haven't put them into the grade book yet. But if you look right there, you were supposed to put that line on all of your pages. That line said that you were doing mobile first. We've already gone over this. The viewport, we went over the content equals, device width, initial scale, it means 100%. All right. Now, the way that this is set up, it says the above 3 meta tags must come first in the head. So you need to put these things right at the top. I'm not going to explain that because it's not something I created. That's something Bootstrap created, saying that you needed that stuff. All right. Then, we're in part 1. This is our Bootstrap 101 template, so it's a very simple template. You can actually go out to Bootstrap, and if you say, well, where can I go to get this template? You'll see this because we're going to go out there later on in this process. All right? So, we want to link to the Bootstrap file, the Bootstrap CSS file. We want to link to our own CSS file. I mentioned this to you previously. I'm saying it again. The link to your file must come after the link to Bootstrap's file, because you're going to end up in your CSS overwriting some of the stuff that's in the Bootstrap file. Does that make sense to everyone? These are just, for lack of better words, these are necessary evils. It's stuff we have to add, stuff like this. We have to add it because it provides, when we want to use Bootstrap classes, it provides us the ability to do so. All right? This right here you may or may not have heard of. Depending on the book you read, it's either called the HTML shim, as you see right there, or the HTML shiv, S-H-I-V. what it says, to just keep it simple, is it says, hey, if you are using an older browser and I have some HTML5 features in here that you don't understand, things like putting an input box in there and saying type equal email as opposed to type equal text. If you don't understand the email, just treat it like text, like you put in a regular text box. That's all it's saying. So in real old browsers like IE6, if you tried to put in a field that had, for an email, it probably wouldn't recognize it. It would just treat it like a regular text field. That's what it's saying. All right. Again, the sole body that's in here just has that H1 tag that has Hello World. Does that make sense to everybody? And I think Colin was the one who asked this question last week. Why is this at the bottom? And I mentioned at the time, and I'm saying it again, there has been debate over the years over whether this stuff should be at the bottom or at the top. All right? Most people think it should be at the bottom because the head of an HTML document loads before the body does. So if this stuff in here needed to modify or whatever, or use anything that's up in the head, now we can be assured that the head has been loaded first. That's the rationale. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it. I don't agree with it. It's just another one of those things. And again, as we mentioned before, the jQuery has to come before the bootstrap.min.js. And remember, this is one file, bootstrap.min.css. That's a file with CSS in it. This is a different file. That's a JavaScript file. Does all that make sense? Anybody have any questions on anything in that first part? All right. Then, I'm closing mine. I'd like you, if you do have it open, to close yours, and it's going to sound weird, but this is the way we're doing this. I want you to go to your part 1 that's right here. Make sure it's open. Highlight everything that's in it. Everything. So highlight it all, however you do it. Control A, or drag over them, or whatever. Or an edit, select all. I don't care how you do it, but highlight all of it. And then right mouse click and choose copy, or however you do a copy. Then go to part 2, which is currently empty. No, it's not, because I'm using the other one. Plop it into part 2. Your part 2 should be empty, correct? Just paste everything in there to part 2. If it has an index file in there, that's all it has in there? Yeah, get rid of it. Is everybody done that? All right. Then open up the index file, please, for part 2. Now we're going to start making some changes. So this was part 1. As you saw, had nothing in it other than the H1 tag with Hello World. So now we're going into part 2. Now we're going to have to add stuff here. As you can see, there's a bit to add. So let's talk about what hasn't changed. And that is the first 30 lines. Nothing in there is going to change except, look on the screen, change your title from part 1 to part 2. I want you to have a running example of everything that we're doing. I don't want any of you to say later, well, we never cover that, because everything that's in here now, you should be able to, once we get done, to implement and put into your portfolio. And this portfolio, just so you know, and Colin can attest to this, this is going to be a living, breathing document. You are going to upgrade it every semester. So by the end of this semester, every one of yours will have examples using CSS3, HTML5, JavaScript, and a little bit of jQuery. And you will actually put those and links to those. And then once you get done with that portfolio, we're going to house it on the Rankin Technical College server that's in St. Louis. And other people, you or anybody else with an internet connection, is going to be able to get to that. All right? And we will have all that done by the end of the semester. Now, again, since Colin took the class with me last spring, he will have not only the same stuff as you, but he will have C# examples in his also. So after next semester, you will be upgrading yours to add C# stuff. And after the fall semester next year, you will be upgrading it with database and ASP.NET stuff. And then finally, the last semester, okay, you will be putting Java in there and Android stuff. And the plan is, I'm going to try this with my students, the second year students in spring. When we get all done, we're going to take your entire online portfolio and convert it into an Android application. So literally, you'd be able to take what you have, take the executable and copy it to anybody's phone or device that's an Android phone or an Android device, and they would be able to open it up. Now, if you raise your, well, what about iPhones? No, this stuff doesn't work with iPhones. I know how to do it for iPhones, but it's other software that we're not using here. In order to do that, the way it exists currently, we'd either have to be working with virtual machines, which I'm not comfortable with, or you would have to also buy a Mac. And I don't think people have the money or the desire to do that. All right, so everybody's made that one change, correct? So let's get down to here. And before you, I'm going to give you time, but before you type anything, please don't, just give me 5 minutes to go over this. I mentioned to you before that one of the big things about Bootstrap is it's div crazy. All right, the people who created it. Now, just so you know, they've actually cut back a little bit on the usage of divs in Bootstrap 4. So if we were doing this in Bootstrap 4, you'd probably have an average of one less div where we've got a collection of divs. All right, so there are less divs. But I want to go over everything that's in here. Yes?
So every single time that they come out with a new version, you have to learn that new version?
Well, the question is every time they come out with a new version, you have to learn the new version. So far, yes. Okay? But they came out with version 2. Then there were a bunch of releases during version 2. So it was like 2.1, 2.2, etc. Most of the time, they're just fixing bugs. Okay? Then they came out with new version 3. Was not compatible with version 2. So yes, the basic functionality was the same, but you may have had to have gone into your previous Bootstrap documents. There was no converter that I know of that you could run it through a filter, for example, and have it go from 2 to 3. None that I know of. There could be, I don't know of any. And the same thing has happened between 3 and 4. All right? Now, there are all sorts of documents out there, some really good documents, that show when you want to go from 3 to 4, what you have to do. Okay? Now, let's just take a couple minutes and go over this. First of all, everything that we do in here, line 35 has got the beginning of a container. And if you notice, down at the very bottom, okay, is the end of our container. All right, and I think that's probably, the comment might be wrong, but we'll fix it. This stuff you've already got. But everything we're doing is inside of a container. All right. Then we've got, this says we're going to create a navigation bar. A nav bar. What kind? The default nav bar. Where is it going to be? It's going to be fixed and at the top of the screen, meaning it's never going to move. Okay, you cannot move it. All right. This, and again, a lot of you didn't put that on your test. When I asked you to put ARIA stuff and make it accessible, you should have said role equal whenever you could have. If you even made a minimal attempt at it, you got points. All right? So role equal navigation. Then we've got our container, as I already mentioned. Now, it says here we're making a nav bar. All right? The nav bar can contain many things. The first thing we're looking at in here is our header. And this stuff that you see right here, I think even though I'm in the way, hopefully you can all see where I am. That's creating that hamburger menu. That thing that where we shrink it down, it becomes the 3 bars. All right? And this is a screen reader only, and it's saying this is going to be our toggle navigation. All right? Then, you may or may not remember when you looked at this, way off to the left it said Rankin Technical College. That's called our brand right there. Now, if I wanted to, I could have come in here. I didn't. We can do this. You already know how, so let me hit enter here. So we can put that in, which means that the nav bar, when you click on it, will go someplace. Sometimes people just put the hashtag here because they don't want it to go to any other site. All right. I probably, if I'm going to do this, I should also come in here, href equals this, and I should come in after this and say, target equals underscore, what is it, blank? All right, I should do that too. If you just want to leave yours as a hashtag right here, that's totally fine. Everybody with me? It doesn't matter. That's not what I'm trying to get across to you. And then what we have over here is this is the right-hand side. So that's all the stuff you see to the right. So we're going to have index, we're going to have about, and we're going to have contact. Notice with index, we've got class equal active. That means that it's going to be a little bit darker right there, so we can tell which one we're currently at, what page we're currently at. We'll change that as we get going. And the about, and then notice for contact, it's got just a hashtag. We're not going anywhere. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes, break this up. Everybody see that all right? All right. So I'll give you about 5 or 10 minutes to key this in, and then we'll move it up, and that should give us the rest of it. All right? I want to see if I've got a piece of paper in my office.
Do I keep the jQuery and all of that stuff?
Yes, on the bottom. Yes, all stays there. It's 8:30, and what we're going to do is we're going to do this as much as we can get done today until about 10:30. All right? We're going to sneak a break or two in there, and then at 10:30, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over chapter 11 with you for about an hour. After we get through with chapter 11 at around 11:30, I'm going to give you back your tests. All right? So that's the plan for today. And then tomorrow, we'll continue with this stuff, and we'll do the test review for chapter 11. All right? And we'll just see where we are there. My hope is to be done with chapters 11 and 12 this week. And don't worry, because chapter 12 is another one of those things that you won't be tested on it at all. I think there's a written test, but it's just all terminology. Then we go over chapter 13 next week, which is again all terminology. And then we go over chapter 14, where you're going to get a very, very light introduction to JavaScript. But good, bad, or indifferent, by the end of next week, so that's October 5th, I believe, we're done with the book you're currently using. From then on, you bring your other book. Yes.
So where are the tests?
We'll figure it out as we get going. Probably I'm looking at like Wednesday, possibly having the chapter 11 test, and maybe even tomorrow morning having the chapter 10, but we would review again first, and then Friday having the chapter 12 test. Anybody have any questions on any of that stuff that's in there? Did you notice, and make sure you put that period that's in here, which means class, dot, navbar, collapse, that one right there is this, wherever it is. All right? But that's what you're using, is what's in here. Now I'm leaving this up there, and Jesse, I hope you can type quickly, because I do have a certain place I want us to get to by, at a minimum, by the end of the day today. Let me tell you that last year what I ended up doing was we watched a video that was 4 hours long. So we watched it over 3 days. We watched some, it wasn't mine. We watched a video, we'd stop, I'd have people key some of the stuff in from the video, and then I'd give them some help, then we'd watch some more. By and large, people didn't just hate it, they couldn't stand it doing it that way. Not only that, since I was a new teacher last year, Shannon, who's one of the site coordinators here, came in and did my evaluation on a day when I was showing a tape. And she wrote, when she had to do a write-up on me, she said, wasn't a very interactive. And I told her, I said, come back any other day that when I'm showing a tape and tell me whether or not it's interactive. But like I said, when people did their reviews, they didn't like doing this. So that's why I decided to do it this way. Any questions on anything that's in there? You don't have to put the comments in like I did. I just find that when you end in the nav bar, to kind of put a comment there to say what nav bar that's going with, it makes it a little easier. If you don't agree, then don't do it. I would strongly suggest, though, that you do the way I've done the tabbing, etc., because it makes it so much easier to debug it than if you don't. Yes.
Should the title in the head section, where would you recommend putting that? Under the links and meta, or in between the links and meta?
It doesn't matter that much. It really doesn't. I don't think there's a standard for that. All right. So last time, anything on lines 32 through 53 that you see on your screen that anyone needs any extra explanation on. Now this is up there. If one of you has, if you have a brain fart and you somehow don't type something in right, and you're like, I don't know what's wrong, it looks right to me, you're going to have to go look at it, and I will be glad to try to help you. I may or may not be able to help you. All right? Has everybody got those first 53 lines in? Yes? No? Then I'm going to move down a little bit on here. Because that's the rest of it. And I'd like you to finish that up. Once you finish it up and save, if you're using brackets, bring up, run it in the browser. If you're using what I am here, then do a run. I'd suggest running it in Chrome. Yes?
Does this go under the triple divs, the closing divs we just did? Or do we need like one of those closing divs folder?
There was a closing div right here, and it's literally lined up with that one. All right, so that I can leave that up. That's everything. The stuff that's at the bottom, Christopher had asked, yes, leave at the very bottom, leave those script tags in there for jQuery and for bootstrap.min.js. So leave all of that in there. And again, I'll come right back to it, but if you look on the screen, when you're all done, if you save and you run it, it should look like this. So this is your nav bar. That's the brand. There's your home, there's your about, and there's your contact. Now, as you're finishing it up, again, any questions on any of this stuff, you know that if you have questions that you can go out to the Bootstrap site, correct? Right. If you would all stop what you're doing, even if you're still typing, and just look up on the screen here, I want you to understand something, or hopefully to understand something, and that is, if you do this, if you go out to getbootstrap.com, it's not going to help you for this assignment because this is Bootstrap version 4. We're using version 3.3.1. All right? So, notice if I come in here and I say Bootstrap, oops, not there. So if I come in here and I say Bootstrap version 3, all right, it's going to give me and tell me that if I want it, I can go out to here, getting started, etc. So instead, I can go to bootstrapdocs.com. So this right here, the reason I'm showing you this is if you have questions, this might be where you want to go to get answers as to why something is done the way that it is. Let me cut that down a bit. So if you go out to here, come on, that'll give you the answers that you need. And Matthew, for what you were asking about before, that's going to give you a lot of the answers. All right. And again, the problem that you had is if when you're doing this, if you don't use the starter file that I gave you, if you use the starter file from Get Bootstrap, it's not going to work. All right. Yeah, and I should have said that earlier, but I didn't know. I guess I didn't realize how different Bootstrap 4 was from Bootstrap 3. All right. Has anybody run it and saved it and it's not worked and you don't know why?
Mine doesn't have the color on the bar.
When you did yours, did you do it like this? And you're talking about the color on the, did you do this? You need to say class equal active right there for the one that's, you know, that for your index.
Yeah, I've got those.
Does it work? You just don't have the coloring on the word index?
I just don't have the coloring on the bar.
The bar itself. Okay. Well, all I can tell you is you'll have to go back and take a look, but if you have all of that, it should have it. All right. Anybody else have that same problem? You don't have the coloring on yours? Did yours work?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, does it make sense to you if you look up on the screen here? Not on mine because I'm further on than you are. But if you click about right now, it's not going anywhere. In fact, you're going to get an error message because it's trying to find about.html and we don't create that till later. And if you create contact, it won't do anything because we're telling it to stay right on that page. Does all that make sense? All right. And this, I think we're just telling it to stay on the page it was on. All right. It's 8:47. It's a little early. Let's take a break. Let's come back at 9 o'clock. I'll be happy, Andrew, to take a look at yours if you want and see if we can figure out why. Everybody else's worked correct? Then before you break, do one more thing for me, please. That is, make sure you do a save all on what you're working on. Okay? Then, the same way we did it, grab everything that's in part 2, copy it to the clipboard, go out to part 3, and paste it in. If you had anything previously in part 3, get rid of it. And then when we come back from the break at 9 o'clock, open up the part 3 index file. Yes?
Were we supposed to do all that in the part 1 or part 2?
You're supposed to do that in the part 2. If you didn't, it's not a big thing. All right, but I wanted you to have the beginning one, which was just the one you get from version 3 of getbootstrap.com, and then we added the header to it in part 2. Now we're going to add the footer to it in part 3. All right, so take a break.